All right, we're on. We're live.
Oh, hello. Welcome, everybody. We will get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for One Avenue is Never Enough, aligning internally to get prospects interested with Rob Beattie and Nicole Kustura. My name is Jenna Blocker. I'm an administrative assistant at Consensus, and I will be your moderator for today's session. DEMOFEST is presented by Consensus. Consensus is an intelligent demo automation software that helps scale pre-sales with interactive video demos. You can learn more at goconsensus.com or view the micro demo at the link in the Docs tab at the right of your screen. Consensus is proud to provide this event for free to all attendees. However, we would like to invite each of you to donate to our company's humanitarian organizations if you would like to. You can learn more about this and donate by visiting the DemoFest Gives Back booth in our virtual expo hall in the Booths tab or at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. We also invite you to join our DemoFest community in Discord. Our community is where we can connect with speakers, get exclusive access to content and events, and where the conversation will continue long after this DemoFest event ends. We encourage all attendees to join us and so many others. You can join the community using the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. We do encourage you to participate in today's session. On the right side of your console, you can see a few ways to engage with us throughout the session. The chat function allows you to engage with us as well as other attendees. Throughout the session, you may see a few polls. We encourage you to participate as your feedback is very important to us. And then our speakers will also be taking questions from the audience at the end of the session, but we encourage you to ask questions at any time throughout the Q&A box. If at any time you are having technical difficulties, head to the gear on the bottom of your screen. And here you will see a help document to help troubleshoot common issues. And now I would like to introduce you to our speakers. We're excited to have with us today Nicole Kustura, the VP of Solutions Engineering, and Robert Beattie, Head of Sales Acceleration at ModMed, or Modernizing Medicine. And with that, I'll turn the time over to you both.
Thank you, Jenna. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining our session. I'm Nicole Kustura, VP of Solutions Engineering for ModMed. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a description of what we do. So we're in healthcare IT. We sell software to medical practices across the country in about 10 surgical specialties. And we sell them software that enables them to not only take better care of their patients, but to run their practice efficiently like a business. COVID brought a whole wealth of issues to many businesses, across the world. Medical practices were, impacted quite heavily from that. So anything that they can have that is going to make them more efficient, drive their business, make sure their bottom line is enabling them to continue to practice, is super, super important for them. And that's really what we do. We give them not only EHR, practice management, but everything they need to run their practice efficiently. Go ahead, Rob.
Yep, and I'm Rob Beattie. It's thanks for everybody for joining this afternoon as well. A couple of people are like a familiar face. I'm like, oh, that's always sweat-inducing when you see people you know. Very excited to have an opportunity to talk with everybody today and to join with Nicole, who does an amazing job of leading our solutions engineering team. My role at ModMed it goes across a couple of different things, but the main piece is I do a lot with our sales development reps, our demand gen efforts, our top of the funnel, working sales and marketing together. As you can imagine, anybody who's in solutions engineering knows that those things all kind of come together and sometimes can create a lot of tension. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to really today talk about our journey on how we have changed a few things. I'll get to that in just a second, but just a little bit of quick background on myself. I've been with ModMed for about 3 years. Came over from a company called Thomson Reuters, where I led a sales team. But way back in my career, I was a solutions engineer a long time ago. I had the opportunity to see Peter Cohen speak, who's very famous in the community, and learned a lot from that. So I'm excited to share back and really, really pumped to get started. So, Nicole, I'm going to get going unless there's anything else you want to add from a background standpoint.
Nope, let's go.
All right. So, for our company, one of the big challenges we face, as probably many of you do, is growth. How do you keep up with the goals of a company that is, not yet a publicly traded company, that kind of thing, as it goes from, 5 million to 10 million to 50 million to 500 million. Like, those steps along the way create challenges for people. And you find often that you're trying to hit the next goal by doing things the way you got to the goal that you're at today. And so we were really examining those challenges and struggling with our demand gen, especially enough to keep up with our needs of the company to provide revenue. So we started really looking at shifting our focus primarily on how do we engage prospects. But we realized to be able to do that, we had to invest and spend time in our solutions engineer team and the way that they were being utilized. And Nicole will cover more of that in a minute. But we really had a challenge with feature function demos and our marketing efforts. We would talk more about us than about them, as in the prospects. Again, we have the challenges and evolutions of our solutions engineer team. Then orchestration across the company. How does sales, marketing, sales development work together? And then we'll talk a little bit about how we're executing the strategy ourselves. And maybe some of you can learn some things from that and see if it helps you as you come across, the future challenges you face in terms of growth. And so really for us, as I mentioned, here's just the challenges we really face when we looked at why is our demand gen not keeping up with where we want to be. And most of you have probably experienced something like this, where when you're new in a business, oftentimes people coming to you for interest is enough to fuel the sales numbers you need, right? Your inbound will do that. But as you go more to an outbound model, because your growth now has to be much more outreach into the market, you come across challenges that you got to be able to deal with. We were very feature function focused on how we brought stuff to the table for our prospects. We would talk a lot about what we did in the hopes that somebody would be able to recognize, oh, I have this problem. Oh, that's what that software does to help me there. We have hours of invested prospect time before we showed them anything. We were very reluctant to come out and say, hey, here's our product, take a look. You'd have to go through a couple of different calls, a couple of different discovery calls before we ever really showed you anything. SDRs is the people that we use to sales development reps. Some people call them BDRs. They've got 1,000 different names, but they're typically very new to the role. And has anybody ever seen somebody who's been at a company, especially a very feature rich, function rich software like what we have, you can get into a lot of detailed questions when you're trying to show it off. And so it's really difficult sometimes for SDRs who are typically new to the role and unable to fully tell our story and relate that to prospects' reality, not to mention the inability to give a demo. When you think about our marketplace, we're selling to doctors, some of the most highly educated people they are, and our SDRs are, as most SDR teams are, typically somewhere around 25 years old, maybe their first sales job or second job out of college after they worked in retail or, wherever they came from. And so they're not really going to be able to come out and say, hey, you've got a doctor's office, you've got these 3 problems, here's something we can do, my experience says this. From a marketing standpoint, we have gated content and lots of it. So you can hit our website and there's tons of stuff out there. There's a bunch of things that you're able to go and get and interact with, but it's gated. And so you got to fill out multiple things. And that would give us, we put up our own blockers in effect for people's ability to go and get our content. And then, as I mentioned, our goals were growing. And so as those accelerate, if you keep, what do they say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting to get different results. We kept hammering with, hey, let's try this message. And we were finding, the results just weren't coming. So there's a phrase that's used today by almost everybody, which is persona-based marketing or persona-based strategy. That was our answer to these challenges. And so doing that is great, except how do you do it at scale, right? Like, how do you personalization at scale is a very, very big challenge for somebody. If I'm expected to make 50 phone calls and it takes me 100 activities to get somebody interested, I don't really have a lot of time to come up with a really detailed message to each individual person. And so when you have to have the scale that you need, plus the personalization that's required, you got to get really focused on how you do that. And so we're going to talk in a little bit about some of those things that we've put in place and have started to do and seen some really strong results with. But a big piece of this is to personalize your content for somebody. You got to have somebody who's got some expertise in what you're trying to do. And that's where Nicole and her team comes in. And I'm sure many of you who lead or are on solutions engineer teams have felt this pain. So Nicole, I thought give it a little chat about the reality of the demands on the solutions engineering team.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so our team are true SMEs, right? They are subject matter experts. So as Rob mentioned, we sell to doctors and medical practices across the country. My entire team came from medical practices. They are clinical experts or financial experts, right? That we pulled out of clinic and trained on how to demo, right? So they really do have that deep, deep, deep expertise, which is why we have become somewhat of the nucleus of the organization, and a lot of people pull on us. And so this is kind of like my graphic to show our everyday. I mean, we are getting pulled into tons of marketing work streams, right? Because the one thing that our CEO asked of us earlier this year is we need to get product in the hands of everybody we can possible. Like, let's get our product out there. Let's not gate it. Let's not force a meeting. Let's lower the barrier to entry to get our product out there, because our biggest challenge is awareness or lack of awareness of what we do and how we do it. You know, we are not as big as the Epics and the Athenas, right? But we are an up and comer and we are grabbing market share left and right. And it's because of our approach to specialty specific. And so that's really how we're verticalized. All of our solution engineers and even all of our selling motions are verticalized, really specialized. And so again, what that means is the solution engineering team, we are a finite number of people that is being asked to pretty much cover a tremendous amount. And you can see from this graphic, I mean, the demands are coming from customer success, from marketing. We have to, staff trade shows. We're being asked to train new people who come on board, right? So we're being asked to help product understand how our product works better so that they can develop the right features and functions, right? It is like nonstop, right? And what was happening kind of before we sort of orchestrated everything was we were getting pulled left and right, and our primary function is to support the sales cycle. And so we were having issues with scale, and we would be interrupted, and we'd have no ability to plan because these requests would just come in left and right, and everything would have a time frame. And so it really was the biggest challenge for us in being able to scale in that environment. So we're going to talk a little bit more about, like, peel back the onion on that on the next slide. So again, the challenges that we faced, just to kind of get more in the details here, is there was no centralized approach to getting our product out there. And it's not just about getting it out there, it's getting it in the right hands at the right time and through the right channel. Those are really, like, that is like the secret sauce to making sure you create brand awareness for your product. And that is something that we struggled with, right? Because the requests would just be off and there was no orchestration on if the SDRs were sending a message out there, marketing sending a message out there. There was just no orchestration of what content was needed. And so it was just kind of creating a very mixed amount of output, which wasn't sticking. And so another thing which I know we all on the solution engineering side deal with is unqualified demos. Those are happening more and more. And as we know, in this macroeconomic challenge that we're in, people really want to evaluate, and almost as if they don't even want to have a meeting, they just want to see your product. And so sometimes we kind of have to lower the barrier, right, to maybe even do an unqualified demo just to get interest, right? But it was eating up time, causing frustration, and frankly, becoming a bit of an opportunity cost, because that time could have been spent on a deal in a later stage and drive a real impact or a real sale. Also, not to mention, as you can see from the graphic that I had up earlier, more and more demands cross-functionally, not just from sales, coming at us left and right. And again, product demos, knowledge transfer, training people, all these marketing events that we had to support, and it really just became overwhelming. And so Consensus is one of the tools. It's not the only tool we use, but it's one of the tools that we really felt like we had to use, not just to help sell into the gaps, right? But to kind of help us solve this like problem that we're facing where we couldn't scale our team enough and in the right way to really make an impact. And so one thing that we did was we created a process. So once we launched Consensus and we were going to start to build demos and content for for sales to start with, we said, hey, wait a minute. Let's just not have sales dictate what the content should be or what those demos should be. Let's involve marketing, because marketing supports the entire organization, from customer success, from product. They support everybody. So they kind of have a really unique vantage point. So we actually had them lead the content curation process. And what I mean by that is we would actually have like a shared document, and we had like a formalized, like formatted document that we had, and we used to kind of feed ideas, and they were leading it, and they would pull in sales, they would pull in product, they would pull in customer success, and they would kind of be the funnel through what content we created on the Consensus side. And so it allowed us to kind of tag team across the entire organization on what should the right talk tracks should be, what should the demos look like, or are we organizing this by buying persona? Like, so we really kind of forced us to organize in a way so that funnel of content came through in a way where we can multiply the output. So what we ended up doing is we actually have a very large library of content now, which is tagged by persona and by business unit, and the entire organization has access to it. So if they look and see like, okay, I'm in this business unit, this is the kind of persona I'm going after, these are the 6 videos that are right there in front of me that I can use, I'm going to download and repurpose. So it prevented the need for my team to get pulled in multiple times, different ways. Everything is being repurposed. And so it's enabling us to scale, and it's scaling the content across the org. So really, it became much more than a sales tool, right? It really became an enablement tool for our company to get our product in the right hands at the right time and through the right channel.
Hey, Nicole, when you talk about the cross-functional demands and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I think there's probably a couple factors that people have experienced, especially if they're at a company that's growing, is to meet your demands for talent, you start to hire from outside the industry you're in, right? So when you first start, it's easier to go get 1 or 2 people who have some industry experience. Would you say as we were growing, that was part of it, is if we had 5 sales reps, now maybe it used to be 3 out of 5 would have some experience. Now it's like 1 out of 5. Is that something that you see happening a lot?
I see it happening in sales and solution engineering. I think it's more difficult to do that, especially because of what we do. It's so specific, and we have to be storytellers, right? We can't tell them, oh, press here, click here, it'll do that. Like, we have to tell a story through how the product that we're showing them actually changed our own life, right? And that resonates. So I feel like I do see that happening in sales. And the good thing about it is this can help enable the salespeople, right, to think like that, right? Because when we develop our content, we have talk tracks, obviously. We have a talk track over it, which really talks about the value, what it's doing, the impact it's having as the demo is playing. It's not just about, oh, it does this or it does that. It's kind of how it changes lives in a way. And that's kind of the information that we're relaying on our demos and in our demo videos, that can help enable those people that aren't from industry to kind of really act and fake and think like they're from the industry.
Right. Which I think is really important, because, you are talking to people typically who have a ton of experience. When we call in and talk to a gatekeeper at a practice administrator at a doctor's practice, typically that person's been in their role for a good long time. It's not usually the first, brand new hire. Doctors have a ton of experience. And so you got to be able to match them. And that's, again, really tough to do, whether it's an SDR or a sales rep who's from a different industry. It can be a big challenge. And I think it's a great point you make about solution engineer talent, in that it's got to be somebody who does have that industry background and does have that expertise so that they can relate, which is, again, that weird circle of, okay, now I rely on these people more, so I need more time of them doing stuff they're not supposed to do, which gets them more busy from where they are. So it's a fascinating issue. And again, you can see one of the different ways that we've come about it, and we'll share a few more too.
And I think one thing to recognize is that not that Consensus has done this in a kind of by itself, but like through the consensus process and really kind of learning about it and figuring out like multiple ways to use it, right? We actually, a lot of ideas have like spearheaded off of how we're using consensus, like this whole personalized strategy, right? We're actually building out personalized prospect websites, right? That we're now embedding consensus videos into. So like we are really kind of taking it, really kind of far in terms of how we're leveraging it. And again, it's really just to create our reach out into the market. And we're seeing really great results with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And you could take the last 5 minutes and be like, oh, that was a pitch that I should be on consensus. That's not,
No.
It's a great tool, does useful stuff, but the process by which Nicole and her team led the creation got a mindset shift across multiple areas of our business. And we're sharing 3 here on the screen, but one is we started to get to more persona-based cadences. We, like most people, use a sales development enablement tool. Outbound activity focused on job roles inside of practices and the specific problems we know they face. A doctor has a very different issue than does a practice administrator, right? Now, at the end of the day, they're both trying to run the best possible practice that they can, but a doctor typically is, how do I see more patients? How do I make it more effective and efficient? Their demands of reporting and that kind of stuff. Oftentimes they are running the small business too. So they do want to see the impact of what the financial situation looks like. Practice administrator, how do I make sure that my patients can get checked in? How do I limit the chaos of the morning? And if you come in with a message that doesn't resonate with either of those two people, they're going to tune you out right away. And so focusing on the specific issues, and one of the activities we did as a team was we went through and we listed out, okay, a doctor in this specialty will have these types of issues. What are the 2 or 3 things that we do? And we ran those by client, or our internal clients, but also clients of ours, on, is this true? Is this what you would face? We have people who are still practicing medicine on our staff. Is this a real issue that you'd face? Yes. Okay, cool. A practice administrator, are these the things that you deal with on a daily basis? Yes. So our hope is, our expectation is, and what we've seen is that people are far more likely to engage when I show up with a problem that they have, not necessarily a solution for it, but a problem. Say, hey, here's something that we think is an issue that you face. Is that true? Now you can get somebody to engage with you, which is really all you're trying to do at the top of the funnel primarily, is just get them to have a conversation. Because once you do, you can eventually get into more in-depth questions and get even further personalization. Second piece of the strategy, we talked about it a little bit, is recording some content. Using consensus in our case to hone in on a few issues and how we solve them to generate interest or answer questions. When I first joined ModMed, Nicole said it earlier, we took a long time to be able to get to where you would see our stuff, and it had to be with an expert, and it had to be basically an hour commitment. Most human beings won't give you an hour for anything anymore. So how do you do it in the phrase that the CRO and I used was a movie trailer experience, right? Like, I don't know when the last time somebody went to a movies without seeing the trailer, but they always want to have something, a sizzle reel, something that gets them excited. Consensus at the top of the funnel allows us to do that. Now, we get probably 5% view rates on the consensus we send out to people that we haven't engaged with a lot, but that's still 5% more engagement than you get from an email. And those people tend to be a little bit more excited when they come to you, because now they've got a taste and they want to get a look at the next thing. And then the other thing, another piece of our strategy is personalized content curation. So taking our website and making it more user-friendly so that when you show up, you can say, hey, I'm a ophthalmologist and I'm interested in this particular issue. Here's some content that I can interact with. We also then have the ability for us to look at that and say, okay, of the physicians that have come to look at this content, they're engaging with this one the most. Let's use that to then go to people who aren't engaging with us, because the likelihood of somebody seeing that and being interested in it is far more likely for them to engage, which again is the thing we're always shooting for. And so these are 3 tactical pieces of our strategy that really started to evolve and take shape just about a year ago, I think, Nicole, when we were really getting into the pilot of consensus and trying to decide how are we going to show this content? It was fascinating. When we first started doing that, we actually started with more of the clinical information, so more doctor focused. And what we discovered is our SDR team was primarily engaging with practice administrators. And so the interest level wasn't there. It was an aha moment for us to say, hey, hold on. If we're going to be reaching out to practice administrators, let's make stuff that makes sense for them. And so I thought maybe, Nicole, it'd be a great idea, kind of take through just sort of how you've now organized the team that I think really makes it, like I always say, I understand this, therefore it must be foolproof. So go ahead and take us through it.
Yeah. And before I jump into this, so one other side benefit that I'm hoping my team agrees, I don't know if some of them are on here, but like one other side benefit of going through the consensus process was our team that was involved in developing the videos, and they were like stellar. I'm so impressed by all of them, and some of them are out here, so you guys are amazing. It kind of forced them to really tighten up their messaging. Like, it forced them, because they had like 30 or 40 seconds. Like, you need to be like on point in 30 or 40 seconds per video clip that we would compile. And like, it really forced them to bubble up. Like, what are the aha moments of what our software actually does? Like, what is it actually doing for the practice, for that role? And it really kind of fine-tuned their ability to deliver, even in a live demo, right? Because they really had to like snip it down and tighten it up. So just a little added benefit I wanted to add, as you're taking solution engineers through the process, it could pay back in spades as well in that regard. So again, in terms of this, the library I was talking about. So yes, we have a consensus library and it's organized, but we had to kind of take it to the next level and really make it sort of bulletproof for anybody in the organization who didn't even know the content that we were developing and where it fell. An easy way for them to look at it and be like, all right, urology, yes, that's my business unit. That's where I'm focused. All right, I need to make sure I find content that is really relative to practice managers, right? And then those are the videos there. So I actually created hyperlinks so people could just click into that and actually watch the video instead of having to go into consensus and go through the library. They can actually watch everything here and then go and send it out from consensus or download it or whatever, the raw files or whatever. So it really enabled us to kind of make sure that we make a visible matrix to our organization of where all that content resides, and everybody has access and can leverage accordingly. And as you can see at the bottom, there's a lot of content that we're being asked to deliver, and everybody's kind of like, the emails and the phone calls that we get, when's this coming? When's this coming? When's this coming? I actually created a little bit of a color-coded grid there where people can see, hey, this one's in legal review, this one's in script development, this one's in video production. So they got to get off my back, and we can enable them to actually look at this and realize what's coming and where it is in the funnel. So it definitely had a dual purpose.
Well, I think that's an important point. If as you're looking at this slides, like we have this one and this one, which are, I went too many back, sorry. No expert at slide management. When you look at this, the boxes across the top, OBGYN, ortho, derm, you have to look at that as its own line of business. Like we have, in effect, when we say we're specialty specific, you really have 10 different lines of business. So you've got 10 different business leaders coming at people asking for stuff. And so you can see why that organization became so important, so that anybody could go here and be like, okay, I don't have to ask Nicole how to streamline clinical documentation by transitioning to podiatry's coming. I know right now it's in legal review, which means that pretty soon we'll be in video production, and then we'll be able to get going, which is really cool. And it does help that orchestration piece, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I did think this was kind of interesting in the Q&A. I just saw this from Matt Towers. Howdy. Curious to know, at ModMed, what's your expectation for how long it should take to onboard a new SE, SDR, sales rep that does not have industry experience? Nicole, what's your thought on that?
For us, it's tough, right? Because medical content is complicated, right? It's not only understanding our software, but you really have to be an expert in talking to a doctor and actually presenting realistic workflows that like he or she would be familiar with. So for us, it would take quite a while. I think in the past, it's been 6 months to a year to onboard somebody without pure knowledge. So But again, I think our industry is different, right? I don't think it's something that, you're talking to, doctors and, very smart people on the other side, and if you're not accurate, they will call you out, and then your credibility is gone. So I think for us, it's our focus is to pull somebody in from industry, but just because of the industry that we're in and the challenges we face.
Definitely. And I would say, knowing that, I look at the entire time that somebody's an SDR as part of their ramp up to gain that industry experience. I am, we have a very organized way in which SDRs matriculate into sales rep roles. There's some gating. You have to pass some tests. You have to complete some assignments. You have to show some success. That helps prepare them so that as they move into an RSM role, or we call it an RSM, sales rep role, they've gotten some of that industry experience. And so to me, that's about an 18-month process, with the hopes that they're producing and doing well in their SDR job. But I know that there's a certain number of phone calls. Is it 1,000? Is it 400 that each person has to make before they really start to find their flow? I'm a big believer in get them going as fast as you can on that. So, and then there's another question, which I think is a good time. I'll read it off to you too, because I think it's kind of for both of us. But what are our thoughts on live demos first versus recorded ones using Consensus? Do you find one works better than the other, or are recorded option used to supplement the live calls? I mean, to me, I find that the recorded ones are used to supplement in many cases. Like there's almost always, we are not yet at a spot where our library is big enough that you could have a sales process likely to be successful without a live demo in there. Is that fair, Nicole?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, look, I think the biggest challenge in our industry is, and I'm sure you all hear it, right? There's like a mass exodus of healthcare professionals leaving healthcare. And so all of our practices across the country, and you as a patient may know when you walk into your doctor's office, their hair's on fire. They don't have enough staff, right? They're running so thin, right? And they are taking on more and more patients, and they don't have enough bodies to handle all the work. So they are so strapped for time. And so we were finding that the barriers to entry that we were creating to have a discovery call, to meet with an SDR, then to meet with a sales professional, have a discovery call, and then have a demo, that's like 2.5 hours of time, right? How many people were not even getting into our funnel because of that barrier?
Right.
So we're using Consensus kind of at the very tip to just kind of like let people do the research on their own, because 80% of the time that people engage in a sales cycle, they're already doing the research. So we're giving them the tools to do the research and really kind of pinpoint where their interests are. And the great thing about Consensus is you can track how much they watch, who they forward it to, what areas of the demo that they're most engaged in. And we can actually come back to them with a recommendation. Hey, we noticed you spent, 2 minutes on this financial analytics demo. Like, let's set up a call and let's do a deep dive. Let me ask you a few questions first, right? So it gave us a really targeted way to pull people into the funnel without creating that huge barrier to entry that we felt was really not conducive to the people we were going after.
Yeah. And just to put that in perspective, I don't know if anybody else listening in has ever taken a child to an orthopod, but with how much that cost for the 5-minute visit that we had, you can imagine what them giving up 2.5 to 3 hours of time to take a look at new software is in just terms of the financials, right?
Money out the door.
Either I'm getting paid and seeing a patient, or I'm not. And so it is something we always have to be conscious of. All right, let's keep rolling. So yeah, that orchestration, we've been alluding to this as we go, but like many companies, not only did we have 10 sub businesses, inside of each one of those sub businesses, you in effect get 3 different pieces that are going out, trying to get people's attention at the end of the day, trying to bring in a sale. You have obviously sales, you have sales development, and then you have marketing. And each one of them has a different way that they want to approach things. They have different metrics that are associated with success. One is probably leads, one is probably opportunities, and one is actual dollars. And so orchestrating all of that and bringing it together, we talked a little bit about it, but in our case, it was the insertion of the solutions engineers into this process of helping create the content, because what do they always say? Begin with the end in mind. As you start to think about what is that, it's actually put our SEs in the stage of, and is kind of the conductor of the orchestra, right? There's a piece of that happens here, because how they're creating that content and moving it around helps influence, okay, what is marketing doing with it? How is sales development deploying it? And then what kind of buyer is showing up to sales? And so, Nicole, I don't know if you want to make any comments on sort of how this plays out for you as well.
Yeah, and I think, at the end of the day, what's great about this is that, people pull on our team for a reason, right? Because we have that clinical expertise, or that biller expertise, or that financial expertise, where even people in our company who have been here for years, right? You can know the product and know the market, but if you haven't been in the role, there's a gap, right? There's a knowledge gap. And so I think just through this process and being able to kind of multiply the mindset of my solution engineers, we're able to do that knowledge transfer through some of this video content, because we're giving them that perspective, which again lacks, in our organization. And that makes sense, right? Because not all of our organization comes from the customer base. So I think for us, it's a multiplier effect, and we're kind of just dipping our toe in the water. I think we're going to start to transform, maybe doing more elaborate, deeper, more qualifying demos. But right now, we're really just kind of set on driving as much opportunity at the top of the funnel, whether it's through web pages, whether through its prospect sites, whether it's through direct outreach. We're just trying to layer as much product as we can into the market, to try to drive that inbound and drive that interest, and using the solution engineer unique perspective to do that, which I think is resonating really well with our client base.
Definitely. And it's, I think a couple of your team are on this call, and I'll just say shout out to that team. It's a very talented group of people, and you want to leverage them as much as possible. So always great to get your best people out there. Yep. All right. So, we've got plenty of time for questions. If there's more questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. We specifically did that. So we'll get to that question in a second, Matt. But from a summary standpoint for us, I think if somebody was to ask me, what do you do to do this well? I think Nicole and her team has done an excellent job. A prior company, I think Tony's actually on this session, but Tony, who I worked with at Thompson, did a good job of being very intentional about what you do. And Nicole's process to organize and curate content for our particular business and the way that we're structured was just an absolute acceleration to us being able to do what we were talking about. Depending on your size of your organization, I always recommend rolling things out in phases. In our world, because we didn't go and say, okay, let's go shoot a bunch of videos and then bring it to everybody. We said, hey, we're going to cherry pick one and do it. And I'm so happy that we did, because I mentioned it earlier, we made a mistake in our first videos that we made for ophthalmology, not in the quality of the video, but for what it was about. We just didn't hit the notes that we needed for who we were actually doing it. So that then got us to shift, and Nicole and her team said, hey, wait a second, we're going to do practice management videos. We can use those for everybody. So we're going to have an opportunity to scale that one up quickly. And so it gives you a chance to get those wins, get people learning, get people going. And so you're doing it in bite-sized chunks for everybody. And this is something, Nicole, you actually said when we were prepping the session, if it can't scale, don't do it. If it's something that you can't use across multiple places, don't get yourself stuck into that. Don't be niche to start with. Right? Be as big as you possibly can. And then, summing it up as you are ever talking to anybody in marketing these days, anybody who's involved in outreach, you'll hear persona-based. That does matter a lot. It really does. I've seen, since we have gone to this much more persona-based strategy, our demand gen numbers have gone way up over the last several months. And I think a big piece of it is we have people focused on who are you talking to and how do you make it about them and how do you share stuff that's about them as opposed to talking about yourself, right? The There's a reason why Nicole and I didn't spend the first 40 minutes of this presentation telling you about our background, because you don't care. What you care about is how can you leverage something of this to help yourself do your job better, solve a problem that you're facing in your business. So with that, field as many questions as you want. We've got time left in the day. Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
I'll answer Matt's question around competitors. So one thing that we typically try to do is take the high road quite a bit. So we purposely don't undercut competitors, although they seem to do that to us quite a bit. But anyway, we don't do that, right? Because we feel like we are so far above and cutting edge, and we're actually kind of disrupting the market a little bit. And so we don't ever want to lead with, oh, we do it better than them, right? It's all about kind of almost as if like we're being thought leaders, where we're anticipating where everything is going. And so a lot of our demos obviously focus on the things that we differentiate on. And that to us is kind of laying the landmines in itself. So we don't call out competitors or anything like that. We don't even say, even like you said, passively, we don't even do that, right? We focus on what we do and what we do really well. And then I think we also really try to focus on making sure that we're also, presenting unconsidered needs, like things that they haven't even thought about, right? That we're bringing to them, because don't forget, we speak to a lot of practices across the country, right? And so we're getting all these perspectives and we're kind of playing them back, even in our videos, right? We know certain things are a struggle. We hear it daily, right? So we're kind of also giving knowledge transfer to the customer, to the client or the prospect, and teaching them on things they may not even be aware of. So that's how we're on the offense, right? We never want to be on the defense and kind of, pull in competitors and use that as a means to kind of present value. It's very unique, and it's like I said, it's really thought leadership that we're trying to put out there, and that's our best offense.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a sticky, even like you said, calling people out passively is even super dangerous, right? So what we hope to do is, if we have a piece of content that we think is relevant to somebody's practice and they happen to be on something that we know is weak, I'm not afraid to share that, but only in the hopes that they see, okay, this process that I could do here is better, because we're in a business where every single sale that we have is a competitive takeaway. Well, I'll say 99%. There's a few times a doctor will split off and go start their own practice, but almost every single thing, there's a status quo. There is somebody we're going after. And if we tried to go after every single one on every single weakness they have, we try to leverage our strengths much greater than we do attack their weaknesses. But if I just showed up and said, oh, we have an electronic health record system, most doctors would be like, yeah, I already got one of those.
Right? Yeah, I'm on my third or fourth. I'm on my third or fourth one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want to switch again. Everybody hates it. I always joke, I have a podiatrist who lives 3 doors down from me, and he was on a product that is something that we should replace. And so I'm talking to him about it. I'm like, hey, don't you want to improve? And he goes like, yeah, man, I just, no, the staff would hate it. And really, I just want to get to Friday at noon, shut the office down and get camping. And, I always think about that guy as that is in certain places your audience. He doesn't want to change. He's averse to change. So you have to show them something that is compelling and intriguing enough to them to say, yeah, okay, I want to see that movie. I want to see what's going on there.
And really, I think it all comes down to tying it to a business outcome, right? Because as much as our clients are doctors, they also need to make money. And so we need to be able to convey business output or business result. And I think that also gets people's attention. And those are things that we call out on our videos, right? It's not just about what it is, it's about what it does. And that's really got to be front and center. Yep,
definitely. What else? Feel free to put any other questions, Jen. I don't know if I didn't see anything else in the Q&A.
There's a couple more. And first off, just thank you both, Rob and Nicole, for the awesome presentation. Just a reminder that we are going to do a couple more questions in Q&A. If you have any questions, drop them in there. and we'll just dive in. So it looks like we have a couple more. So someone says, at ModMed, what's your expectation for how long it should take
Oh,
to
yeah,
onboard?
we grabbed that one.
We
We
answered
answered
that.
that one along the way.
Oh, apologies. Did
No
you also
worries.
answer one from Brian?
Yeah, we got Brian's too. Yeah, we did a
Oh.
quick little Q&A in the middle, which we didn't tell you, so sorry about that.
I was watching, and I don't know how I missed it.
It's okay.
But,
It's all right.
okay, well,
I do, like, Nicole, I do have one question for you. When, just as a solutions engineer leader, like how much time and how it's not really to what we did, but I think people might be interested. How do you evaluate the quality of their demos? Are you able to find yourself, because I will tell people, we don't record a lot of stuff, right? So how are you able to, and how does your team enable excellence amongst your solutions engineering team? I think some of the people on here would find that interesting.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, right, and we have metrics that we kind of like the team is aware of in terms of like how quickly their demo stages. So every deal is tracked. They always can see number of opportunities. They can see how long a sales cycle, how long the demo stage was before it moved to proposal and contract. So that's also an indicator. So the metrics kind of tell us a story. But it's not just about metrics, right? It's the feedback we get, right? Either a feedback from a prospect or a client, or, we go to an on-site. What we'll do a lot of times is we'll go, because my team is just, again, super strong subject matter experts. They can go to a medical practice and they can actually evaluate their operation. They can go and sit with the front desk person and see how they schedule appointments. They can go to the biller and see how they're processing claims. They can go and they'll evaluate it and assess it. And actually we'll give them an assessment and say, here's how you did, right? And so we have that expertise. So I think, it's super important, like we've actually had those on-sites where we're about to leave and like the lead doctor's like, oh, can I hire your SC? Like, we get that a lot. Like our team wants to get hired by practices and so all that. And my answer is always no. But I think the end of the day is the feedback, right? And the metrics like that combined. And then obviously the win rates really tell the story, and we're able to really assess how folks are doing.
Yeah. And so I see another question in there from Matt. Thank you. How long is your typical sales cycle as a disruptor in your market? And do you have data to show any impact on sales cycles length since you've adopted consensus? This is what I would say. We are using consensus far more at the top of the funnel effectively right now than we are in the middle of the sales process. I think that's the next step for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still pretty light in enabling that piece as far as just behaviors of sales reps. But at the top of the funnel, we have definitely seen a massive increase in the number of opportunities that we're having with people today. So it's not quite double. I think it's about 150% up year over year, but that outpaces growth targets. So that's a good thing.
And just to kind of, we're doing a phased approach, right? Our first few months with consensus, our first 6 months was a pilot, and we did it with 2 specialties out of 10. Right now we're rolling into our 5th. So we're only halfway through the business units, and we're seeing those kinds of numbers come up. So yes, we're still very early in the process. Again, our biggest issue coming in and why we took consensus on was top of the funnel, right? Now that we're in this marketing stream where we're using it in the website, we're using it in webinars, we're using it right now, we're kind of going to dive back into like the second layer where we can actually develop deeper videos and demo content for in the sales cycle. Once we're in the sales cycle, we've had that initial contact, we've had that discovery call, we maybe even had a live demo. Now what are we doing with the leave behinds to progress that deal and get faster to contract, right? So those are things now we're going to start to dip our toes into. And so that will be something that we're super excited to take on and see what kind of results we get.
Definitely. And then there's another question from Sean, which is, basically going persona based, where do you try to get other stakeholders into the conversation? I will tell you, Sean, as soon as we possibly can, the sooner you have your stakeholders in. To Matt's question about typical sales cycle, I have a suspicion that it's been lengthening slowly over time. Like what the sales cycle was 3 years ago, it's probably weeks to months longer now as you get harder and harder to disrupt somebody into what they're doing. And so the sooner we can get those other stakeholders involved, we want to. A lot of the practice sizes that we sell to, though, the ultimate decision maker is often the doctor. It's not as frequent that you get a management group or an ownership group, but we do try to get everybody involved. But if we can get to the doc, we often start with the practice administrator, but then if we can get to the doctor, that's what we're trying to do. Great.
And Sarah had one about top of the funnel. So top of the funnel in our mind is nobody knows who we are, right? Nobody knows who we are. Like, how do we get that's why we have a very marketing centric strategy with Consensus, where we're trying to first of all, we have a lot of events where we kind of create awareness, right? But we also are we're sending emails out because, we have a database. We know where every doctor office is. Like, we have a unique situation where we have a hard data on when every single one of our TAM, where they are and what their number is and what specialty they serve. So that is a luxury that we have. So we can be very targeted in our outreach through marketing and kind of lead them to the website, which is when we kind of pull them into that persona-based experience. How do we solve the problem as a biller, as an admin, as a doctor, and take them through a path that's really targeted and kind of contextual, using combination of Consensus content and other content, PDFs and things that we have that we use to kind of educate, regulations that are coming down, right? So we really try to create that experience. So top of funnel is really leading them to the water, right? That's kind of how we look at it.
Definitely. And I would add to your kind of follow-up question there, Sarah, what do we share with them if you're going persona-based? The good news is we have a pretty good idea of what a majority of practice administrators at a doctor's practice with 2 docs experience as issues. And so we can have a very strongly educated guess as to what would be of interest to that person. But it is a bit of a fishing expedition. Sometimes we do have to share 4 or 5 different things until something resonates. I'm always reminded of the decision maker I talked to during a process of deciding if we were going to make a new piece of software at a prior company. And I asked her, what would cause you to actually take a sales rep's phone call? And she said, if that person was calling me at the moment with a solution to the problem that I had, I would take that phone call. And so it's kind of what's the problem right now? If I can hit you with that, great, but there's that, you got to take that approach of I'm here to help. I want to see you be successful. Here's some ideas of how you might enable that differently. Nicole said it earlier. We want to be thought leaders. We want to be somebody who is taking them from how they are today and move them forward.
I'm going to take this next question. So Matt, that's a really good question. And that's why I think right now we're at the point where our videos that we're putting out in the field or out in the customer base are very high level, right? They're not deep into the weeds. And so it's core differentiators, and core values and things that kind of relate to output, right? So for example, our software is all about saving the doctors and the admins time so that they can get back time in their day to do what's most important, take care of the patients, and to get reimbursed. That's all they care about, right? So everything that we do in our video content is relative to that. So we're not getting deep into function and features, which again, when you have new product releases, that's really what gets impacted. So, I can see how, so like right now, for example, with urology and ophthalmology, which we launched in the pilot, there've been some changes, right, in the product. So now we're circling back around and going to start to update the content based on those features. So you kind of have to have, in addition to your content creation cycles, you got to have refresh cycles that you plan throughout the year to go back to original content and clean it up and replace maybe with, more relevant functionality. So yes, that is a process you absolutely have to have as part of your entire kind of work stream.
Yep. Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, if we kind of come to the end here, we just really appreciate everybody's interest in joining us today to learn a little bit more about what we do. Let us share our story and some of the things that we've achieved. Nicole, any final thoughts you have for the audience?
No, I just hope this helps you. And if you're thinking about taking on tools to enable this, whether it's consensus or not, like just have a process, right? And I know I didn't sign up for being kind of the shepherd of this entire process, but it kind of ended up in my lap, and I'm glad it did, because I think it's saved our company a tremendous amount of time and kept the sanity of my solution engineers intact, which is very something that I'm very focused on. So I think all in all, the more we use it, the better we're going to be as an organization. So I'm excited to share this journey with you and wish you guys all luck.
Definitely. Jenna, thanks again. We'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that awesome session, for all your insight and knowledge. We really appreciate it. If you could unshare, I'll just share a few last minute housekeeping items before we move on. All right. Yeah, thank you all for joining us for this awesome session. We want to just remind everyone about our DEMOFEST game, where each session you attend and each session feedback survey you fill out does give you points, and you have the opportunity to win some of these really awesome prizes. So please fill out those surveys. They are very helpful for us. We are very excited to be bringing DEMOFEST on the road again as DEMOFEST X. We had a great time in San Francisco back in March, and we can't wait to bring the event to Dublin, London, and New York City later this year. You can register to join us at any of these events in person at demofest.com, which is also at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. A lot of important things in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. So be sure to check it out. We also encourage you to stop by our expo hall to visit our premier partners of DEMOFEST. And we just want to remind you that there was no transfer of money involved in this event. So all of our partners here have gone above and beyond to contribute to making this event a success for all of you. And we just want to thank you for joining us for One Avenue is Never Enough, aligning internally to get prospects interested. And thank you to our speakers for that valuable insight and knowledge. Up on the screen are the upcoming sessions, and you'll automatically be pushed to the next session in your track. And you can switch tracks or sessions by toggling to the agenda tab at the top left of your screen. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you soon.